Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming GPD XP Plus Android gaming handheld. Now they're going to be launching an Indiegogo very soon, and I'll leave a link in the description. And on the channel we've actually taken a look at the original XP, and at the time it was released, it was actually the most powerful Android-based handheld on the market, at least hardware-wise when it comes down to the CPU and GPU combo. Since then, we've actually had a couple that did outperform it, but now they're back again with the most powerful Android-based handheld as making this video. And that's because they've opted to use the Deminsty 1200 in this unit, and it actually puts out some really great performance. So this is a modular handheld. It actually comes with a few different attachments. First up, we've got the right side controller. This is exactly how I'd be using the handheld. And they also include a MOBA style controller. Just got a few buttons here. This can be programmed from software, and it does come in really handy when playing MOBAs on your Android device. This also includes a 30-watt fast charger, but it does support up to 65-watt fast charging with a 7,000 mAh battery, and they're claiming up to 12 hours of battery life out of the GPD XP Plus. So they're calling this a modular handheld, and it does come with a few of these detachable controllers. They magnetically attach here, and they're not going to come off really easy, so you don't have to worry about them, wiggling off or falling off. They attach really nicely. We've got the controller and the MOBA style controller. Personally, I'll be using the controller a lot more, and on the original GPD XP, I only used this one a few times, but I'm not huge into MOBAs, and if you are, just keep in mind that this can be programmed from software. The screen on the XP Plus looks amazing. It's a 6.81 inch with a resolution of 1080 by 2400. It's got 500 nits of brightness, and it is covered by 5th generation Gorilla Glass, but it's got an aspect ratio of 9:20. So when it comes to streaming games and emulation, you will have a lot of black bars on the side, but for native Android gaming, it's a great little aspect ratio, and those games will fill the screen perfectly fine. When it comes to the internal specs of the Plus versus the original XP, they've upgraded basically every aspect here. For the CPU, we've got the MediaTek Deminsty 1200. This is an 8-core ARM CPU. We've got one Ultra A78 core at 3 GHz, 3 Super A78 cores at 2.6 GHz, and 4 A55 cores at 2 GHz. The GPU is a Mali G77 MC9 at 900 MHz. We've got 6 GB of LPDDR4X RAM running at 4,266 MHz, 128 GB of UFS 3.1 storage, so it's a lot faster than the original, micro SD card support up to 2 TB, 6.81 inch IPS display at 2400 by 1080, a 7,000 mAh battery with 65-watt fast charging capabilities, and they're claiming up to 12 hours of battery life on this unit. They've also upgraded the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so now we have Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2, and this is running Android 11 right out of the box. When it comes to the button layout, I think they've done a great job here. I love this D-pad. It is a little larger than some of the other Android handhelds on the market, and personally, that's exactly the way I like it. It feels great under pressure, and I can definitely pull off all the special moves I need in my favorite fighting games. We've got our back button, home button, and menu button for Android located right here, so we've got those physical buttons. We've also got a dedicated controller mapping button, but one of the most interesting things about the controls on this unit is the joysticks are actually using Hall sensors instead of kind of an analog connection. This isn't new technology. This was used way back when the Dreamcast was released. But instead of having kind of a physical connection, this relies on a magnetic field. So in theory, we shouldn't have to worry about any kind of joystick drift on this unit. And when it comes to the right-hand side, you can obviously swap this out. You can use no controller attachment over here and use half of the touch screen. You can use the included MOBA controller, or you can go with the traditional gaming controller attachment. We've got Start Select, another one of those Hall sensor joysticks, and our A, B, X, Y action buttons. They work great, but they're a little on the smaller side when you compare to other handhelds, and I kind of wish these were just a bit bigger. So up top here, we've got our shoulder buttons and triggers, and I really do wish they would have upgraded these trigger buttons because they're not linear. So they're not analog, they're either on or off. It would have been really nice to have some linear triggers on this unit. Another thing we have up here is our power button, our volume rocker, and a vent for the built-in fan. This uses active cooling, so the Deminsty 1200 they're using in here can run at its highest clocks basically all day long without overheating or thermal throttling. And finally, down here, we've got our speaker outputs. This uses dual stereo speakers. We've also got a 3.5mm audio jack and our SIM/SD card tray. Now, I said SIM card, and that's because this does support 4G, but here in the States, I'm not exactly sure what network this would be running on, so I'm just going to be running on Wi-Fi the whole time. But we do have Wi-Fi 6 here. As soon as you're finished setting this up, you're going to be greeted with a screen that looks like this. All these apps will be located here except for the Dolphin emulator. There's a built-in arcade emulator with a few games ready to go. Really easy to use, easy setup. All you got to do is initialize the app. There's a few cloud services already installed like Steam Link and AMD Link. But we do have Google Play, and I've gone through and I've installed a bunch of stuff that we're going to be testing out. The launcher we're looking at right now is known as the G-Box Desktop. This is what comes preloaded on it. We do have some help videos here in case you need to know how to map your controller or turn the fan on. I'm not a huge fan of this launcher, but it's easy to navigate, and if you really wanted to, you can always swap over to the Quick Step launcher, which is just a basic Android launcher like you would see on a tablet or a phone, or you can go through and install a third-party launcher. It's really up to you. We can change the resolution of the screen here all the way down to 1600 by 720. Easy to do, and this might help out with performance in certain games that kind of struggle, but we do have a pretty powerful CPU and GPU combo here. We also have a little bit of fan control. We can basically turn it off, go to low, or go to high, and in high it's going to keep this thing nice and chilly, but it does make a little bit of noise. I usually leave it in low mode, and I haven't hit any kind of thermal throttle while doing emulation and gaming. And one of the coolest things that they have built in here, which does help out with games that don't natively support controllers, is their mapping software. So all we need to do is hit this button. Very self-explanatory. You're just going to move these around to the on-screen touch points, and it's going to map those touch points to the physical controller. So you can use this controller with basically any Android game you want. I do wish there was some more custom software built in here, like an FPS counter. I mean, we've got the built-in screen recorder, but there's a few things that they should have thrown in here. Mainly, that FPS counter would really help out just to let you know exactly what's going on while you're playing native Android games. And we'll definitely be testing out some Android games and emulation, but the first thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks. And first up, we've got Geekbench 5, single core 832, multi 2814. Now the closest competitor to this is definitely going to be the AYN Odin, and I've run some benchmarks on that. It's got the Snapdragon 845, and on that device with Geekbench 5, single core 519, multi 2258. So we are coming ahead on the single and multi when it comes to this Dimensity 1200 versus the Snapdragon 845. But what about the GPU? Here we have 3D Mark Wildlife. This is a Vulkan benchmark for the GPU. We got a total score of 4,154, and on the Snapdragon 845 device, 2,120. So GPU here is beating it out, at least in synthetic benchmarks, and the final one I ran here was Antutu. On the GPD XP Plus, 682,943. And on the AYN Odin Pro, 438,139. And if you take a look down the list, the GPD XP Plus is beating it out in all of these, from UX all the way up to CPU. Time to check out some native Android gaming, and the first one we have here is Minecraft. We're at 15 chunks, fancy graphics is on, and I knew it was going to run it just fine. We shouldn't have an issue with Minecraft. Looking really good here, and at 18 chunks, I do notice a couple stutters here and there, but I took it right down to 15 and we're good to go. Checking out Call of Duty Mobile, high settings, frame rate set to maximum, and this is where that frame counter would really come in handy. If they had a built-in one, we'd be able to tell if this was running, at 40 or 60. I mean, it's definitely super smooth, and as you can see, I've got the built-in controls working, but if I had to guess, I'd say that this was running at 60 FPS. It's a very smooth experience. And the final native Android game I wanted to test here was Genshin Impact. That built-in controller mapper does work with this game. It doesn't natively support controllers on Android yet. We're at medium settings, 60 FPS, and I do notice some dips here and there. So some of these settings may need to be taken down to low if you just want a super smooth 60, or you could go up to high and run it at 30 all day. I mean, it's really up to you, but the game is playable on the GPD XP Plus. Now it's time to check out some emulation, and I wanted to start out light here just to show you the D-pad in action. We've got Dreamcast using Redream. We're upscaled to 1920 by 1440. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And this device has more than enough power to play these Dreamcast games at full speed. So if the game's compatible with the Redream emulator or even Flycast, you're going to be able to run it no problem at all. PSP is another one that performs really well on this chipset. Here we have PPSSPP, Vulkan backend, 3X, Chains of Olympus, running at full speed. But if I take this game up to 4, it does kind of fall on its face. It goes down to around 53 FPS. So 3X on these harder to run games still looks great on this built-in display. And if we can run this at 3X, then we can definitely take the easier to emulate stuff way up on this. But now it's time to take it up a notch to Gamecube using the Dolphin emulator. I'm using the latest development build from the official website. This is an MMJ, and you could probably get better performance using MMJ or something like that. But here's Soul Calibur 2, native res, Vulkan backend, running really well. I mean, this is a very playable experience. But you can see we've got a lot of black bar on each side here, and that's because we're running these games at 4x3. You could always turn on 16x9, stretch it out, or some of these games do have 16x9 hacks. But with this 9x20 display and running 4x3 games on it, we get a very small window in the middle. Next one I wanted to test here for Gamecube was one of the harder ones to emulate, Automodalista, still at the native res, Vulkan backend, and it's running at full speed. And keep in mind, I'm using the official build of Dolphin. This is the latest development build as of making this video, and we're getting great GameCube performance. So far, when it comes to emulation on the Dimensity 1200, I think it's doing a great job, but we still got one higher end emulator to test, and that's going to be PS2. Okay, so here we have Bloody Roar 4 using Ether SX2, OpenGL backend, 2x resolution. Now with this Mali GPU, I've just had much better luck using OpenGL over Vulkan. And when it comes to these Mali GPUs and Ether SX2, there are known issues. I mean, some of these games might have some glitches, but right now I'm in safe mode. And even with Ratchet & Clank going commando, it does a pretty decent job. I did have to take this down to 1x res, still using that OpenGL backend, but it's still having a hard time running it at a constant 60. You'll definitely see a dip down. And again, I'm in safe mode. If you don't mind a few hacks running on in the background, maybe a little frame skip going on, you can get kind of a smoother experience out of this turning unsafe mode on. It's really up to you. But the final PS2 game I wanted to test here was Gran Turismo 4. Went back up to 2x, still got that OpenGL backend going. It runs really well, but these Mali GPUs do need a little work when it comes to Ether SX2. But overall, I think the Dimensity 1200 handles emulation like a champ. Now there's still a little time before these go up for pre-order, and I will have at least one more video coming up, so if there's anything else you want to see running on the GPD XP Plus, let me know in the comments below. I definitely want to do a full comparison video between this device and the Odin, because when it comes down to it, the Odin is going to be its main competitor, at least when it comes to Android-based ARM devices. These are going to be, the most powerful ones on the market right now. And as we saw with the synthetic benchmarks, the Dimensity 1200 does have a leg up when it comes to CPU and GPU performance over the 845, but there's a lot of developers out there kind of optimizing for Snapdragon and Arduino GPUs. So when it comes down to it, at least for emulation, it's going to be really close. But I will have a full video coming up, and like I mentioned, if there's anything else you want to see running on this device, let me know in the comments below. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look at the GPD XP Plus. If you're interested in learning more, I will leave a few links in the description. And like always, thanks for watching.